Why no contact is the worst thing for a dismissive avoidant. Let's dive into something that's often misunderstood in the world of dating and relationships, the idea of no contact. Many people, especially after a breakup or after feeling mistreated, are told, just go no contact, ignore them, block them, don't give them the satisfaction. It sounds empowering, and in many cases it is. But when it comes to a dismissive avoidant partner, no contact isn't always the solution you think it is. In fact, it can often make things worse, not for them, but for you. The dismissive avoidant psychology works differently than what most of us are used to. And if you try to fight their detachment with more detachment, you might end up feeding exactly the behavior that hurts you. Today, we're going to explore why no contact is actually the worst thing you can do when dealing with a dismissive avoidant, and what you should do instead. To begin, let's understand what a dismissive avoidant really is. These are individuals who learned early in life that closeness equals danger. They grew up in environments where love was conditional, where their feelings didn't feel safe to express, and where independence was rewarded more than vulnerability. So as adults, they cope by withdrawing, by shutting down when things get too intense, and by keeping emotional intimacy at arm's length. The dismissive avoidant often craves connection deep down, but has built such a powerful shield of self-sufficiency that they convince even themselves that they don't need anyone. Now think about what happens when you go no contact. You're basically confirming their lifelong belief. See, people leave. I was right not to need them. I'll survive without them. And that's why no contact rarely hits a dismissive avoidant the way you want it to. When you pull away completely, the dismissive avoidant doesn't suddenly wake up in panic and say, "Oh no, I've lost them. I need to run back." Instead, their protective walls tighten. They use no contact as proof that their emotional armor works. Their inner voice says, "Good thing I didn't get too close. This is why I stay independent." While you're sitting there waiting for them to chase you, they're busy rationalizing your absence. They'll bury themselves in work, hobbies, or even new connections, not because they don't care at all, but because distancing is their survival skill. So instead of missing you in the way you imagine, they double down on avoidance. And that's why no contact can be the worst strategy. It pushes them deeper into their comfort zone, not out of it. Here's another layer. If you're in a cycle with a dismissive avoidant, chances are you're the one with anxious attachment tendencies. You crave closeness, you long for reassurance, and you hope that pulling away will somehow shock them into realizing your worth. But what usually happens? You sit in silence, counting days, obsessing over whether they'll reach out, and growing more restless as time goes on. Your nervous system goes into overdrive. Instead of healing, you're stuck in limbo, waiting. The avoidant, meanwhile, isn't playing by your emotional rules. No contact doesn't bother them the way it bothers you, so you're stuck suffering while they appear unfazed. That power imbalance is exactly why no contact can backfire. The truth is, dismissive avoidants aren't motivated by absence. They're motivated by emotional safety. They don't respond to punishment, distance, or ultimatums. What actually shifts them is when they experience consistent, calm presence without pressure. That doesn't mean chasing them or begging for attention, but it does mean showing that you're not a threat to their independence. If your only strategy is silence, you become another ghost in their story of abandonment. But if you can hold boundaries while still radiating stability, you become something they rarely find, a safe person they can slowly lean on. Think about it like this. A dismissive avoidant expects people to leave. They've rehearsed that story their entire life. So when you walk away in silence, you're playing the exact role their trauma cast for you. You're confirming their script. But when you don't play the script, when you show that you can care without smothering, love without demanding, and stay present without chasing, you disrupt their expectations. That's where the shift happens. And that's where healing becomes possible, both for them and for you. Now, this doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect, neglect, or abuse. Boundaries are non-negotiable, but boundaries aren't the same as no contact. Boundaries say, this is how I expect to be treated. This is what I won't accept. This is how I'll protect my peace. No contact, on the other hand, says, I'll pretend you don't exist. For a dismissive avoidant, that difference is massive. Boundaries invite healthier connection, while no contact pushes them deeper into avoidance. So why do so many people cling to the no contact rule? Because it gives the illusion of control. It feels like taking your power back. And yes, if someone is truly toxic, manipulative, or dangerous, no contact is absolutely the right choice. But when we're talking specifically about dismissive avoidance, people whose walls come from wounds, not malice, the no contact strategy often does more harm than good. It cuts off the very chance of rewiring the bond into something healthier. Another reason no contact backfires is because dismissive avoidants are masters at compartmentalization. They can put feelings in a box and lock it away for months, even years. You think silence will haunt them, but silence is their comfort zone. They can distract themselves with achievements, friendships, casual dating, or even solitude. It doesn't mean they don't feel anything, it just means they're skilled at numbing it out. By the time you hope they're missing you, they've already convinced themselves they're fine. If you really want to reach a dismissive avoidant, the path isn't through punishment, it's through paradox. You give them both space and connection. You show strength without coldness. You hold your own needs without making them responsible for fixing them. You demonstrate that intimacy doesn't mean control. This is where your true power lies, not in silence, but in balance. Not in cutting them off, but in showing that love doesn't have to equal suffocation. Let me paint a picture. Imagine two people after a fight. One storms off and says, "I'm done. I'll never talk to you again." The other doesn't chase, doesn't beg, but instead calmly says, "I need space right now. I'll be here when you're ready to talk." Which one do you think the avoidant eventually trusts more? It's the second one. The person who can give distance without disappearing. The person who respects both their own needs and the avoidant's fears. That's what creates breakthroughs with dismissive avoidance. Here's the real kicker. Dismissive avoidants often come back not when you ignore them, but when they feel safe enough to believe you won't crush their independence. That takes patience, self-control, and emotional maturity. If you go no contact out of spite, you're operating from fear. But if you can stay grounded, clear, and calm, you become something rare in their world. A partner who doesn't abandon or control, but who also doesn't lose themselves in the process. That's the balance that cracks the avoidant shell. So what should you do instead of no contact? Start with emotional detachment, not from them, but from the outcome. Stop making their response the measure of your worth. Then set boundaries that protect your peace while still leaving the door open for healthy connection. For example, I won't tolerate being ignored for weeks, but I'm here when you're ready to communicate respectfully. That way, you're neither chasing nor abandoning. You're standing strong. And strength is what draws an avoidant closer, even if slowly. The truth is, dismissive avoidants don't respond well to extremes. If you chase too hard, they run. If you cut them off completely, they retreat. But if you can master the middle ground, firm yet kind, detached yet open, you create a kind of gravitational pull. You're not playing games. You're not punishing. You're embodying security. And that's the one thing they secretly long for, even if they don't admit it. So the next time someone tells you to go no contact with a dismissive avoidant, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this to heal, or am I doing this to manipulate? If it's the first, then maybe space is good for your peace. But if it's the second, know that avoidants don't break under silence, they hide deeper in it. If your goal is growth, healing, and maybe even rekindling, no contact might be the worst thing you can do. Choose strength over games, presence over punishment, and clarity over silence. That's how you win, not just with them, but with yourself.